Hi lovelies, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're returning. In this video I am doing a VR response to Honey Lou Wilson, who recently did a tag about unicorn decks. So those decks that are out of print or incredibly difficult to find, or they've been dream decks that you've been searching for. Now I have got a few unicorn decks. Actually 2023 was an incredible year for unicorn decks for me. I just happened to get lucky with second-hand purchases online, and I did recently, actually in the last few videos, share the 3 unicorn decks I got for my birthday and Christmas. So I am going to include those again in this video. I hope that's not boring and repetitive, but hopefully with this top-down setup you'll be able to see the decks a little bit clearer. But there are some other unicorn decks I've got in my collection that weren't bought in 2023 that I'd also like to include. So I'm including every unicorn deck that I have. One of the first being the Ellis Oracle, which is a Spirit Speak Oracle deck. This is, if not my very favourite Oracle deck, it is right there in like the top 5, definitely, possibly top 3, possibly even the very top one. Now I've edged mine in black. Now why is this a unicorn deck for me? When I first saw it, I absolutely knew that this deck was something that really spoke to my journey in life. It really does feel like somebody designed this deck having watched my life play out as a fly on the wall. It really impacted me massively when I saw this deck online. When I looked into purchasing it, I realised that the Spirit Speak decks are not available. They're not posted to the UK anymore. So it was totally impossible for me to get it. The only way I thought I'd ever get it, if I happened to come across it second hand. So I put alerts everywhere I could possibly think of, and I waited and I waited and I waited, and eventually from a UK seller this deck came up second hand. It was very beaten up and it was all shredded around the edge, hence me edging it in black. I've actually coloured in a lot of the crease marks and the wear and tear on this, to a point that I think it has hidden it really well. But even battered, I couldn't believe it when it finally came up from a UK seller, and I got it for, I think I paid £19 for it, so it was an absolute steal. And I was so excited because this had been a unicorn deck for a while for me, and it was just patience and waiting and accepting that this wasn't a perfect copy and that I would really need to do some work on this to get it into a usable state again. And now, oh my gosh, I love it so much. I really do. So the Ellis Oracle, that's my very first unicorn deck, found by patience and waiting and alerts on different sites. I'm going to include this one because although this was gifted to me, the actual deck was gifted as long as I would pay for the postage. Now the postage of this deck, I think it was about 60, possibly £70 to the UK, and then it was like another £29 on import taxes. So it cost me still nearly £100 to get this shipped to the UK. Now with that cost, and also with the cost of the deck being expensive anyway, this, which is the Mysteries of the Black Madonna, would not have ever ended up in my collection. So for that, this makes it for me a real unicorn deck, because it isn't one that I probably would have saved for, just because of that triple whammy expense of the deck itself, the import costs with our taxes into the UK, and the delivery costs. it would have put it out of the remit of what I would be paying for. However, with the cost of the deck out of the equation, it was one that I was prepared to dip into the savings pot for. What a beautiful, beautiful gift to be given. This is beautiful it's beautiful over the Christmas period. It's beautiful, I think, to use this deck in winter. I am absolutely thrilled to have this unicorn within my collection. Now, it isn't just that deck, the Mysteries of the Black Madonna, that I wanted. I also really wanted Mysteries of Mary from the same creator. This was right up there as well as a It's Never Gonna Happen unicorn deck. I have shown this in the last few videos, so I'm sorry for the repetition, but how could I not include this deck, which was a huge unicorn deck for me. This one I bought as part of my Christmas present. This came up from a UK seller, so again, there was none of that huge delivery cost. There was no import taxes, so I've saved myself close to £100 there already. And the cost of the deck was reduced as well because it was second hand. And although I paid second hand prices for it, the deck had actually never been used. It was still within its packaging. It hadn't even been opened. It came with all the bits all unopened, like the rosary and a little Mary statue, which is right here. It came with its printing number, which is here. This is 34 out of 50. You can see everything unopened. It came with the book. None of it touched. So again, like the other deck that was gifted to me, with some of those cost factors out of the way and a reduced price on it, it became a possibility. It was no longer a unicorn, and I managed to land it in the bidding process, which was quite fierce when the eBay bidding came up. As you can imagine, I think every UK buyer that had got this deck on its radar was there ready to try and snap it up. So yeah, I was really thrilled. What a wonderful Christmas present to myself this was. So it was another unicorn deck that became possible due to circumstances. Another unicorn deck which became possible for me again through watching eBay and putting alerts out was this original printing of the Celtic Tarot by Courtney Davis. Now this is the very first printing of this deck, which came with a journal, which actually has writing in. The end is free, but I love the fact that the beginning has somebody else's writing in. It comes with its own guidebook, and the deck is in this beautifully printed lift up box. Now I had seen this deck, I'd seen the reprint, and even the reprint was out of print, so not for a second did I think I'd ever be able to find this version, like the original version of this deck. So to find it was just unbelievable, I think. I'm going to zoom in so you get the full impact of just how beautiful these cards in this deck are. So the minors are very pippish, but I don't mind that at all. But the majors, oh my goodness, look at the artwork and the Celtic knotwork and the details in the majors. Also the details in the pattern work and the artwork of the minors. They might be pippish, but there is still so much pattern and so much detail and so much Celtic knotwork represented in these minors. Even though they're pips, I just think they are stunning. The backs look like this. I also love the colour palette of this deck. I think it's incredible. So I actually ended up getting this deck for £8. Nobody bid for it, even though I'd seen this deck go for huge amounts of money. There were other decks online that buy it now over £200. So I just don't think anybody had seen it. One other person bid. I think I put £5 starting bid. I think somebody bid £7 and I went up to £8. And I was sat there with quite a higher bid ready to go, but nobody else bid. So it came to me for £8. I thought it must be a fake to get it at that price, and when it turned up I couldn't believe my eyes. I quickly did a check through the deck to see if all the cards were there, and they were. And then I just sat there, I think, for about half an hour in complete shock that I'd got it for £8. It wasn't a fake. All the cards were there. It wasn't covered in mould. It wasn't all ripped and falling apart. And that I'd finally found it. So isn't it beautiful? Look at the artwork in it. Isn't it just gorgeous? So that is the very first printing, if you can ever find it, of the Celtic Tarot by Courtney Davis. Sticking with the Celtic theme, I'm going to share now a Caitlin Matthews deck. This is the Celtic Wisdom Tarot, which does come in a big box, which I do have, but I've got the book out and the cards are in this bag now, just because the box was, it was one of those where you lose the cards. So I wanted this deck. Oh my gosh, I wanted this deck for ages, and it was one that I didn't actually think that I was ever going to find. I really didn't. I'd kind of given up on this one. It had come up on UK eBay a few times, but it always went for too high a price. It was just too much every time. So every time I kind of really sadly let it go and just hoped that one day one would arrive for me at a slightly better price. So you can see this is all Celtic mythology. It holds lots of that Celtic mythology stories. It is just anybody interested in working with the Celtic pantheon and the Celtic gods and goddesses. This really is a beautiful deck to own, because the guidebook goes into all of those stories and explains who all these people are. So it is really lovely. I love again the colour palette in it. And it's the deck that I've been using to work with the god that I work with, which is the Dagda. So for me it fits in just perfectly with my practice. So how did I track down this unicorn deck? Again, it's just constantly checking eBay for it, having alerts out on eBay, and not jumping at a price I couldn't afford, but just waiting and waiting and waiting. I think this was about the fourth time that this deck had come up, and I was thinking, shall I just go higher price to get it? But it actually, it's a long time now, but I'm pretty certain I got this for about £28, which, if you know the price this deck goes for, you know that is actually really, really good. I mean, anything under £50 for this deck is just incredible. So I was really thrilled to get this one, and yeah, it is treasured, and I do feel incredibly lucky to have found it at that price. So that is Caitlin Matthews' Celtic Wisdom Tarot. Okay, the next two are gifts, but I am including them in unicorn decks because they are decks that are out of print and I'd looked for, or in this case hadn't looked for, because there was no way I thought I was going to find it. And these are gifts. This one was a Christmas gift a couple of years ago from a good friend of mine. This deck came out on Kickstarter, and it was the creator was very clear that she was only ever going to do this one print run of it, and that would be it. And she was very clear in all her marketing of her deck that it was a one-time only deck and it was never going to go up for reprinting. So I had loved this. I know that Lisa Pepez did a lot of shows of the preview of this deck. It is in the most gorgeous cardstock with this gorgeous edging and these beautiful backs. One of the things I love about this deck is that the artist painted these paintings actually with seawater that she collected. So I love that about the lore around this deck. And it was just one that I couldn't do. To be honest, I don't do Kickstarter. With most of them aren't UK based decks, and with the shipping and now the import taxes into the UK, it always doubles the cost of decks on there, and they're already at the top end of my price anyway. So I tend now to never even look on Kickstarter, but I had seen this, I loved it. It was one of those I thought I will love seeing other people have that deck, and I just forgot about it. And then it came in a Christmas box of goodies from my friend from America. She'd bought herself a copy and me a copy when it came up on Kickstarter, and I just, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. So that's how this, what I thought was going to be a unicorn deck that I'd waved goodbye to, came into my collection. So it is unfortunately one of those that I think is going to be incredibly hard to find at any point in the future unless you leave alerts out for it online. And the next one was from the wonderful Queen of Set, who sent me a gift box, and in it was this Legend, the Arthurian Tarot. Now you may know that I love all the Arthurian Tarot decks. I'm doing the HalloQuest still. Arthurian Tarot decks, Celtic Tarot decks, also like Lord of the Ring Tarot decks, that kind of feel to decks I really love. And I'd seen this because I wanted to kind of get a little collection of all the Arthurian decks that are out there. This was one that I'd seen, but I just couldn't find it anywhere because it is out of print. So when this came in a box from Queen of Set, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, it is out of print and I hadn't been able to find it anywhere. So it had gone onto that unicorn deck list for me, and to just get it out of the blue, it was just such a wonderful surprise. It is a very limited colour palette, which I think is really interesting for an Arthurian deck. They're often like very deep greens, they're really earthy deep green colours normally, like those colours that you would associate with the Celts, kind of more the colour that it looks like on the box. But when you open the cards, they are very sort of washed out, paler, more silvery, more wintry vibe colours to it, which I think is really interesting, especially with this purpley back. It's all very, very interesting, the colours of them. So this is something really different, I think, and I was just amazed and really grateful. So that was another unicorn deck that came into my possession. That's the Arthurian Tarot, but it's the Legend one, which is made by Llewellyn. It's an old Llewellyn deck. So hopefully I get to work with this one this year. So yeah, the Legend, the Arthurian Tarot, was another gifted unicorn deck. So here we've got the Shakespeare Oracle, which is a tarot. Don't let the fact it's called an oracle fool you. This was one of those 3 decks that I got this year. So I got the Mysteries of Mary deck. They were all from the same seller for online. They were selling off their collection. All of these, the 3 I got this year, were from that seller. and I am incredibly grateful, because this had been on my unicorn list for a while, for a few years. I think I first saw this on Meg's channel on Rose Honey Ritual, and it just never appears online apart from like really ridiculously high prices. Again, this is another pip deck, but it has beautiful quotes, Shakespearean quotes across the minors. We've got majors that look like this. They are different characters from the plays and from Shakespeare's writings. I just really have always wanted it from the first minute I saw it, and like I said, it was out of print right from the get-go, and it's never appeared. Years and years of waiting, it's never appeared. So when it came up on eBay at the end of last year, just before my birthday, I knew that I was going to move heaven and earth to get it, and I was prepared to bid quite high. I decided that my savings this year were going to go on these second-hand decks, these unicorn decks, and this was one that I did manage to buy, and it didn't cost me anywhere near what I thought it was going to cost me. I got it for an absolute steal and was just incredibly pleased about it. So I just think it feels very earthy. It feels very Shakespearean, as I suppose it should. And I love it. It's just going to be an exciting addition to come on my Stratford adventures this year. So that is the Shakespeare Oracle, which is actually a tarot. I'm also going to share the third unicorn deck that I got for this year. I got this one with the Mystery of Mary tarot for Christmas. So this is the Guardian Angel Tarot cards. This is a Radley Valentine and Doreen Virtue deck. Now this has been out of print. I think this was out of print even the very first time I saw it, which was about 4 or 5 years ago was the first time I saw it, and I think it was already out of print then. There were lots of fake versions going around, but of course I didn't want any of those. I wanted this, and it never came up. When it did come up, it was buy it now, silly prices, like hundreds of pounds. So it just went on the unicorn wish list, and I just basically, I'd kind of given up actually. A bit like with the Shakespeare Oracle, I'd kind of given up because it never appeared at an affordable price. But it came onto eBay by that same seller for a really reasonable price. I got it for a steal again, and it went into my Christmas present list, and I'm so happy that I got it. I think the backs are gorgeous. It's just a really gentle, I think, vintage feel to it, and I am thrilled. I'm thrilled that I've got it now. So that was another wish come true. So this also was another unicorn deck. This is the Barbara Walker I Ching of the Goddess divination kit, and I recently did an I Ching study with a group of friends. I was really pleased that at that point I had finally found this deck. Now me and Barbara Walker, we go back a long way, because when I did my constructed textiles degree, which I ended up doing crochet sculpturing, but I specialised in knitwear, Barbara Walker, you might not know, has a whole series of the most incredible knit books for different knitting stitches, and literally I had all of those books and they were my absolute Bible. So when I was a full-blown textile artist, before I'd even heard of tarot or oracle, all those years ago in my 20s, the name Barbara Walker was not unknown to me. She was the writer of my knitwear Bibles. literally I never went anywhere without those books. I worked with them every day designing knitwear designs. And so when I finally, a few decades later, get into tarot and oracle, to realise that she also is in this world, it was incredible. And I love her work, I love her fierceness, I love her writing, and the fierceness is ever apparent in this oracle. So really, I'd always wanted it. Anything Barbara Walker does, I'm right there to buy, purse in hand. So it took a while actually with this deck on search. It does come up overseas a lot more than it does here in the UK. So I was seeing it online, not frequently, but more than once I'd seen it, but it was always overseas, and it was always double again. It would double the cost to get it sent over to the UK. So I just waited and was patient and patient and patient. Finally one came up in the UK, and this is that one. I managed to secure it, and it's been fantastic, especially when I did the I Ching study. I loved it. Brilliant oracle. So that's the I Ching of the Goddess Oracle or Divination Kit by Barbara Walker. So we are down to the last 3 decks. So in this one, this was a deck that was on my unicorn list for forever. At the time I didn't realise that this occasionally gets a reprint, a limited reprint run. So this had just lived on my, I'll never own that deck, but I love it. This is of course the Arnell's Art Ellen Lorenzi Prince Tarot of the Crone, one that I thought I'd never own, but one that finally came up for, I think it was a limited 100 deck, or it might have been 200 deck reprint. And honestly, I sat looking at it thinking I still can't afford that, and I waited. I think there were about 4 decks left when I finally thought, you cannot not get it. It's been on your unicorn deck list for forever. So I was one of the last few people to place an order before it ran out, but then it went missing in the post, and I waited months and months and months. After about 6 months, the company started to work with me. They tried to track it down. They don't know where it went. It never turned up, but they sent me a completely new copy, which was amazing. I wasn't really expecting it, because it's hard to prove, isn't it, to say it just hasn't turned up. But there was no quibble. There was only absolute apologies. They were brilliant about it. And finally, after, I think it was probably after about another 8 months, this deck finally turned up. So it felt like such a drawn out process of wishful thinking that it would never show up. But finally, the Tarot of the Crone is in my possession, and I love it. This is the Shining Tribe Tarot, which I think I've heard is about to get a mass market release, which is incredible, because this has been out of print for so long. And oh my gosh, I loved it, absolutely loved it. But out of print, never shows up secondhand. Was just one that went on the unicorn wish list. Absolutely never thought I'd find it. It came up on UK eBay, and with the book as well. I've got the big book that goes with it, and it came up on their secondhand listings, and I got it. Oh my gosh, I did get this really cheap. I think it was around the £20 mark. Again, I managed to get this, which I couldn't believe. Now, when it came, it was slightly smelly. It has had to defumigate for quite a while to become usable, but now it's completely fine, and I love it. Oh my gosh, I love it. So if you are liking the look of this deck, I am pretty certain, I've heard a number of people say that this is soon to get a mass market re-release, so keep your eyes open for that, because it is a fabulous deck. So that is the Shining Tribe Tarot. The last deck that I'm going to share is one that is currently out of print, and it was out of print when I was looking for it. The Ellis deck. Now this is the 4th edition. As you can tell by the fact that it's an edition number 4, it does sometimes come up for a reprint or re-release. It comes with this as the guidebook, which I think is fabulous. This I got second hand. I'm not sure whether this is supposed to be borderless or not. I looked online and the 4th edition is still out of print, but it does show with a white edging to it, so I have a suspicion that this was trimmed, but I'm not mad about it. Look at this. So this is the Ellis deck, out of print when I was looking for it. It came up again, a UK seller on eBay, dirt cheap, nobody bid against me. It was one of those moments where I thought, I cannot believe I've managed to find it and to secure it. Again, it was one of those that I didn't think I'd ever own, and it just, I think the lesson is keep looking. Don't get sucked into jumping at something you can't afford. If it's meant to be, it will be. Don't get sucked into huge delivery costs thinking you will only ever get it abroad. Although I think when we're looking for these decks, you will see like 6 copies abroad to every 1 copy here in the UK. It's still doable if you hold the faith and are prepared to wait, which has been the story of necessity around a lot of these unicorn decks that I've found. So that's just something to not jump. And to be honest, I'm going to be truly honest here, I've had this a number of years and I've never used it. So it just goes to show the time passes anyway, and I haven't used this deck yet. It is one of my core decks for working with this year. What I'm doing is I'm looking at some of these decks that I love that for some reason or other I've never got round to working with, and I'm trying to pick out a core 10 for this year that no matter what, I'm working with them this year. And this is one of those core 10, because there's no reason, apart from the fact I haven't prioritised it, that I've not worked with this. I love it. So it just goes to show that you can wait. I mean, I could have waited 3 years and only started looking now, and it wouldn't have changed my practice at all. So hold the faith, be patient, keep the faith that it's going to turn up. Don't be sucked into spending way more than you have allocated. None of these decks I've spent more than I would have allocated or I've saved for. So yeah, and they do show. I'm looking at this big pile of decks on my bed next to me, and I'm just thinking I could have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more to have got those than I actually did. So yeah, patience is key, I think, with a unicorn deck. So guys, that's it. Those are my unicorn decks. I will leave links to all the original videos down below for you to check out. It's a great tag. It's a really nice way of seeing some unusual decks and possibly adding more to your wait list, because I love seeing out of print decks that I wouldn't get to see any other way, because who knows, that might be the next £10 deck I find in a charity shop or on eBay UK. Who knows? But it's always nice to get a chance to see what different decks are out there. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Bye.